Okay, welcome back to the Center for Critical and Cultural Theory. My name is Dr. Roger K. Green. This is a contextualized reading of Book 18 of Homer's Odyssey for our ongoing course, Homer and the Critique of Western Civilization. If you're enjoying these lectures or listening to them in podcast form, and you're able to support us on Patreon, please do so. It helps us continue being able to pay our internet hosting fees and all sorts of things. So, Book 18, The Beggar King of Ithaca. We know that in the last book, Eumaeus has just left Odysseus in Odysseus' own palace. He's in disguise as an old beggar. We know he's been summoned to Penelope at dusk. And then Odysseus is sitting disguised as a beggar, eating on the porch. And as he's sitting there in the opening of this book, we get another beggar who shows up. And so the theme of beggars and strangers is definitely ongoing here. But this is a beggar named Arnaeus, who is also called Eris for short, who is well known in the town here in Ithaca. And so he feels like this new beggar has moved in on his territory, and he tries to remove Odysseus. And Odysseus is horrified here. A killing look, he says, he gives, and the wily old soldier countered, "Out of your mind? What damage have I done to you? What have I said? I don't grudge you anything, not if the next man up and gives you plenty. This door is big enough, door sill is big enough for the both of us. You've got no call to grudge me what's not yours. And you're another vagrant, just like me, I'd say, and it lies with the gods to make us rich or poor. So keep your fists to yourself. Don't press your luck. Don't rile me, or old as I am, I'll bloody your lips, flatter your chest, and buy myself some peace and quiet for tomorrow. I doubt you'll ever come lumbering back again to the halls of Laertes, royal son of Odysseus." And then we get this counter argument. "Look who's talking," the beggar rumbled in anger. "How this pot-bellied pig runs off at the mouth like an old crow-knitter oven. Well, I've got a knock-out blow in store for him. I'll batter the tramp with both fists." And so as this is carrying on, the suitors notice, and they start laughing at the two beggars. And Antinous jumps in, and he says he wants to see the two fight. And all then leapt from their seats with whoops of laughter. They're going to watch the beggars fight. And what's more, Antinous says, is that from this day on, the winner of the fight is going to feast among us. No other beggar will we allow inside to cadge his meals from us. And so Odysseus, being wily and planning ahead, makes them swear, okay, if we're going to do this, then you're not going to step in and on behalf of Eris. Telemachus then makes them seal the oath, saying no one will step in. He says, "Stranger, if your spine and fighting pride prompt you to go against this fellow now, have no fear of any suitor in the pack. Whoever fouls, you will have to face a crowd. Count on me, your host." And the two lords back me up, Antinous and Eurymachus. Both are men of sense. And so they agree to the terms. And then Odysseus kind of like takes off his cloak, and they see that he's got these really strong legs, after he takes off his rags anyway. And this scares Eris. But then Antinous urges Eris on, and he says, "If that old relic whips you and wins the day, I'll toss you into a black ship and sail you off to Achatus, the mainland king who reeks all men alive. He'll lop your nose and ears off with his ruthless blade. He'll rip your privates out by the roots, he will, and serve them up to his dogs to bolt down raw. So pretty grim fate for the loser here. So that threat scares Eris even more. And Odysseus makes the decision whether or not to completely lay him out and kill him, or just knock him down. And he decides on the latter and just beats him, knocks him out. And as he does it, punches him outside. He says, "Now hold your post, play the scarecrow to all the pigs and dogs, but no more lording it over strangers, no more playing the beggar king for you, you loathsome fool, or you'll bring down something worse around your neck." And there's a bunch of praise from the suitors then. They're congratulating him on the win. "Stranger, friend, may Zeus and the other deathless gods fill up your sack with blessings." Another one calls out to ship him off to Echetus, fast, the mainland king who wrecks all man alive. And then welcome words and a lucky omen to Odysseus's heart leapt up. Antinous himself lays before him a generous goat sausage. And then Amphinomus takes two loaves from the wicker tray and sets them down. And he says, "Cheers, old friend, old father, saddled now as you are with so much trouble. Here's to your luck and for great days from this day on." And Odysseus says to Amphinomus, "Amphinomus, you seem like a man of good sense to me, just like your father. At last I've heard his praises. Nisus and Dulichion, a righteous man and rich. You're his son, they say. You seem well spoken too. So I will tell you something. Listen closely." And we get this opining from Odysseus on the weaknesses of human men. Of all that breathes and crawls across the earth, our mother earth breeds nothing feebler than a man. So long as the gods grant him power, spring in his knees, he thinks he will never suffer affliction down the years. But then, when the happy gods bring on the long hard times, bear them he must against his will and steal his heart, our lives, our mood, and men as we pass across the earth, turn as the days turn, as the Father of men and gods makes each day dawn. I too seemed destined to be a man of fortune once, and a wild wicked swath I cut, indulged my lust for violence, staking all on my father and my brothers. Look at me now, and so I say, let no man ever be lawless all his life, just take in peace what the gifts the gods will send. And here he turns and he warns the suitors. And with that, after warning them, he pours out honey, wine, and to the gods, and to drink deeply. And then Amphinomus made his way back throughout the hall, his heart sick with anguish, shaking his head, fraught with grave forebodings. So it does touch his heart, the warnings of Odysseus here. But as the text says, no one can escape their fate. And so Amphinomus, even though he's touched, is still doomed, like the rest of the suitors. Then Athena inspires Penelope to address the suitors in this really interesting way. She tells her maidservant Eurynome to go. She says, "Though my spirit longs, though it never did till now, to appear before my suitors, loathe them as I do. I'd say a word to my son too, for his own good, not to mix with such a pernicious crowd, so glib with their friendly talk." So she's going to go and rebuke them, and then her servant Eurynome says that, "Oh, well, you should bathe and you should get dressed up first." And Penelope says, "No, don't try and coax me. I don't care how I look anymore. I lost all of that when Odysseus went away. I'll never brave those men alone, though, so she says, give me a couple of other women to go with me. And as the nurse goes on to get them, Athena casts a sleep over Penelope, and as she does, she then enhances Penelope's beauty. And so I just want to give a little bit of attention to the text and what is considered beautiful in women here at this time. Luminous goddess lavished immortal gifts on her to make her suitors lose themselves in wonder. So remember that, aesthetics of wonder. The divine unguent first. She cleansed her cheeks, her brow, and fine eyes with ambrosia, smooth as the oils the goddess love applies, donning her crown of flowers whenever she joins the Graces' captivating dances. She made Penelope taller, fuller in form to all men's eyes, her skin whiter than ivory, freshly carved. And now Athena's mission accomplished, off the bright one went, as bare-armed maids came in from their own quarters, chattering all the way, and sleep released the queen. And so then she looks marvelous here. The ultimate kind of royal woman who doesn't have to labor in the sun and is therefore pale. But as I mentioned in the last book, Odysseus is tanned and dark. And so we get noticing differences in skin color, but the skin color, of course, during this time of history, does not mark one off as being racialized in any particular way, although we see it with class in the women. Then she appears before her suitors, and when she appears, we get this moment of wonder in the night, this beautiful line. The suitors' knees went slack. Their hearts dissolved in lust. All of them lifted prayers to lie beside her, share her bed. But turning toward her son, she warned Telemachus, and she kind of rebukes him, and she says, you used to be smart when you were younger. You used to have better judgment. But now, like, you invite this stranger in and you let this contest happen. And what would have happened if your stranger had been hurt in your own halls while you let this contest go on? What if he were badly hurt by such cruel treatment? You'd be shamed and disgraced in all men's eyes, and then the gods, of course. And Telemachus counters her back, and he says, Mother, I can't fault your anger at all of this, but my heart takes note of everything, and it feels it too, both the good and the bad. The boy you knew is gone. But how can I plan my world in a sane and thoughtful way? These men drive me mad, hedging me round right and left, plotting their lethal plots, and no one takes my side. Still, this battle between the stranger and Eris hardly went as the suitors would have hoped. The stranger beat him down. And then there's this hope, slumped like Eris down at the gates outside. Now he's wishing the same fate for the suitors. Whipped and his head rolling around like some drunk. He can't stand up on his own feet and stagger home. Whatever he's got, the man's demolished. And Penelope agrees. They exchange their hopes, and then Eurymachus steps in to praise the queen. And he says, daughter of Icarius, wise Penelope, if all the princes of Ionia and Argos saw you now, what a troop of suitors would banquet your halls. Tomorrow at sunrise, you surpass all women in build and beauty, refined and steady in mind. And Penelope is demurs. She says, oh no, Eurymachus, whatever form of future I had before, I don't have anymore with Odysseus being gone. And so publicly here, she is mourning and remembering Odysseus. And she says, Zeus has torn away my joy, but there's something else that mortifies me now. Your way is a far cry from the time-honored way of suitors locked in rivalry, striving to win some noble woman, a wealthy man's daughter. They bring in their own calves and lambs to feast the friends of the bride to be. Yes. and shower her with gleaming gifts as well. They don't devour the woman's goods and go scot-free. And so this is smart, and the text tells us that Odysseus glows to hear this his wife's trickery, to say, like, you suitors have been draining my own house, but the normal way of this is that you should be bringing gifts to me if you really want to marry me. And the suitors refuse to leave. They say, we won't leave until you're married. But they all send servants back to grab gifts for her because she looks so great. Each suitor sent a page to go and get a gift. Antinous' man brought in a grand, resplendent robe, stiff with embroidery, clasped with 12 gold brooches, long pins that clipped into sheathing loops with ease. Eurymachus' man brings a necklace. We just get more and more gifts. And while this is then happening, Odysseus walks up, and they bring in fires to light it, because remember, the sun has gone down here now, and the fires are being built up, and Odysseus comes to send the maids away and say that he, as the beggar, he can take care of the fires. He'll do his duty as a beggar in the house. And the maids then rebuke him. One in particular, Melantho, who mocks Odysseus. And we know that she's Eurymachus' lover. So Eurymachus has a lover even though he's a suitor. And she says to the stranger Odysseus, cock of the walk, did someone beat your brains out? Why not go to bed down at the blacksmith's cozy forge, or a public place where tramps collect? Why here, blithering on nonstop, bold as brass in the face of all these lords, no fear in your heart? Wine's got to your wits, or do you always play the fool and babble nonsense? Lost your head, have you, because you drubbed that hobo Eris? You wait. A better man than Eris will take you on. He'll box your sides of your head with heavy fists and cart you out of the palace in gushing blood. And then Odysseus turns and he says, you wait, you bitch. The hardened veteran flashed a killing look. I'll go straight to the prince with your foul talk. The prince will chop you to pieces here and now. We get this kind of very misogynist language. I don't have a Greek translation in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly what the Greek word is, but it's a nice translation, and those of us who speak English know well the way that the word bitch is used with a particular sting in our misogynist culture. And so the women flee from him, screaming. And then we get Athena showing up again. Athena had no mind to let the brazen suitors hold back now from their heart-rending insults. She meant to make the anguish cut its still deeper into the core of Laertes' son, Odysseus. So then Polybus' son, Eurymachus, launches in. And remember, he's the lover of this woman that Odysseus is just kind of sent packing. He says, listen to me, you lords who court our noble queen. I simply have to say what's on my mind. Look, surely the gods have fetched this beggar here to Odysseus' house. At least our torchlight seems to come from the sheen of the old man's head. There's not a hair on his bald pat, not a wisp. Then he wheeled on Odysseus, raider of cities, and he says, stranger, how would you like to work for me? If I took you on, I'd give you decent wages picking the stones. But he starts saying, yeah, you'd never come to me because you're too lazy. And Odysseus says, Eurymachus, if we could only go into the fields together and work as laborers, because I swinging a well-curved scythe and you swinging yours, we'd test our strength at work for work, fasting right till dusk with lots of hay to mow. And he goes on, or we could do any other number of contests, and I would beat you. And this, of course, enrages Eurymachus. And he says, you odious, I'll make you pay for your ugly rant. bold as brass in the face of all these lords? No fear in your heart? Wine's gone to your wits, or do you always play the fool and babble nonsense? So those words of his lover being repeated right out of his mouth here. Lost your head, have you, because you drubbed that hobo Iris? And as he shouted, he seized a stool, but Odysseus, who's already had one stool thrown at him today, crouches as he throws it, and it hits the wine steward instead. This causes the suitors all to be laughing, and so we see this class rivalry going on even within the halls of the palace, and even within the fact that strangers are on the one hand supposed to be welcomed because they could be gods, they're still made fun of. And then the suitors say, would to God this drifter had dropped dead anywhere else before he landed here. Then he'd never have loosed such pandemonium. Now we're squabbling among beggars, and so there's this sense that the lords, the noblemen who are the suitors, have been brought down because of the antics of this beggar who's been hanging around them today. And Telemachus comes in and he breaks up this discussion, and he says, fools, you're out of your minds, no hiding it. Food and wine have gone to your heads. Some god has got your blood up. Come, now you've eaten well, go home to bed. When the spirit moves, that is, I, for one, I'll drive no guest away. And so he's playing the part of the host again. And he says, this convinces them, it pacifies the suitors, at least for now. And one of them, Nisus King Aretias' son, says, fair enough, my friends. When a man speaks well, we have no grounds for wrangling, no cause for abuse. Hands off the stranger and any other servant in King Odysseus' palace. Come, let's make our libations and go home to sleep. And so the suitors retire home for the night. And they tip their cups in libation, and they each go off to their own house. And so this is going to set us up now that the suitors have gone and they can't hurl more abuse at the beggar stranger Odysseus. Now Odysseus will go and see Penelope after nightfall, as was planned earlier in book 17, but we will pick that up in book 19. I hope that you have enjoyed this, and if you can, please support us on Patreon. But we will keep carrying on the lectures regardless. So have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. We'll see you in the next contextualized reading with book 19.